Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Taylor Stanley, and I am the Family Engagement Specialist for DC Public Schools. When we first conceived of this workshop, it was a month ago, and we didn't expect for the workshop to be this relevant. I am a parent. I'm trying to find the words of how to process this. And I know that I cannot be on the front lines. I know that I can't march with folks right now. And so honestly, being able to do this is a blessing. And the fact that I'm able to do this as my job is a blessing. We've never had this many people RSVP for one of our workshops. We had over 1,000 people RSVP for this particular parent university. We have people from all across the country, and go ahead, give a shout out to where you're from. I want to give a shout out to all of our DCPS families. I want to, acknowledge our charter school families within the city. I want to acknowledge folks all across the country, my family and friends in Georgia. We have folks who RSVP'd from Hawaii. We have folks who RSVP'd from Australia and different parts of Africa. And so this is just absolutely profound. Again, my name is Taylor Stanley, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist for DC Public Schools. And I will be introducing you to our panel, and we'll be sharing a lot of great information for you. For those of you who would like to read along, we have subtitles in Spanish, French, and several other languages for you all to follow along. We have staff who are available to answer questions in Spanish and French. And I want to acknowledge the fact that we have a multicultural group of moderators from DC Public Schools who are here to respond to your questions, to answer your questions. And I'm just eternally grateful for them. As part of Microsoft Teams, and some of you all have figured this out, we have a Q&A space. And so this allows you all to ask questions, to share some insights that you might have. We encourage you all, because we have so many people on right now, if you see a question that you would like answered that's already been posted, please use that thumbs up, upvoting button, and that'll let us see how we can prioritize the questions that we have. This is a moderated Q&A, so we won't be able to post every comment, answer every question, and it's a blessing to be able to have a moderated space, because we want to make sure that this is a safe space for you all. We want to be sure that you all feel safe asking questions, that you feel safe engaging with us in a way that you're not prone to perhaps be engaged in a way that feels dangerous for you. So if we do have trolls, you all will not see it. And that's why I'm forever grateful to our moderators who are available to make sure that you all are safe in this space to engage and ask questions in a way that feels better than maybe other spaces. So that we ask that as you engage with us, please remember that the moderators and our facilitators are also real people with real lives who are also still processing everything that's happening. So we ask that you provide us with a little bit of grace, that you give us a little bit of comfort in that we are doing the best that we can, and we may not have all the answers, but that we're all working through this together. So we're asking that you go hard on ideas, not on people. And then also, we're not going to be able to solve racism tonight. I can't tell you how much I want to be able to solve racism tonight. I wish we could, but that's just not likely today. But this is an amazing, great start. And the fact that you all are here is a testament to the fact that people want to do the work to dismantle racism, and it starts in your own home. So I'm asking that you accept non-closure when we leave here tonight. So part of what makes my job so great is that I'm able to work for a leader that is able to speak out to these issues, who is able to engage with our communities and talk about his experiences. And so I want to introduce our chancellor from District of Columbia Public Schools, Chancellor Lewis Farabee.
Good evening, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. This is Lewis Farabee, proud chancellor for the District of Columbia Public Schools. And as we've outlined tonight, we're here for a very important discussion, and extremely proud that so many of you have decided to join us. You should know that DC Public Schools stands with our community in grieving the recent tragic deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McDade, and the list goes on. And I share in the hurt, the confusion, the anger that many are experiencing here in the district and around the nation. And for me, this also hits home as a African-American male who experienced law enforcement in many different ways. And as a father of a young African-American male, and as alluded to earlier, we know that we are not able to solve all of our challenges tonight, but we do have a duty and responsibility to think about a path forward. And we all believe that that path forward starts in our home with our youth. As we think about where we are as a nation, we must think about our ray of hope, which is our children. And the reality is the foundation in which young people learn to love, learn to judge, and the way they think about people that are different from them are rooted in how they're raised and how the adults around them respond to others. And so we're really pleased that you've joined us for this conversation of how do we as adults, how do we as parents, as the first teachers, begin to have conversation with our children about what's happening around them and what they should expect from us. And so I understand that this may be a hard topic for some, but I'm excited that we are offering this session today, and we hope that the resources and the tools provided will prove to be helpful. I hope this will start an important dialogue as well for you in your home. And again, thank you for being here today. With that, I'll turn it back to Taylor to help moderate a few questions.
Thank you so much, sir. It's really comforting to see leaders, especially leaders of our school systems, stand up. We have people all across the country. We have people across the world who've RSVP'd for our workshop. And so knowing that there are leaders who are able to engage in this kind of conversation, I think, especially for those who might live in school districts where that's not happening, what you're doing is actually very courageous in itself, and to speak to your experience as a Black man in America. A question that I have, and this is like parent to parent, what are some recommendations that you have for families about talking about race with their children?
I think the first thing we all must do is acknowledge that where we are today is a consequence of a very colored and dark past and history that we have to acknowledge. And so I think helping our young people first understand some of the course of events that have led to where we are today, helping them understand the challenges of institutional racism that has gone on for decades, and then also helping them understand where we are as a nation as it relates to our leaders and those that have come before us who've tried to address some of these challenges, and where we've seen some successes and also where we realize some failures. So I think there's some important history lessons that have to be taught as we go into these discussions. And then the other advice that I have is that, you know, we have to filter social media, television, all the outlets that our young people are tuning into, because they oftentimes shape how young people think about themselves and the way that they think about a future. And as parents and guardians and adults in the young people's lives, we have immense responsibility, more so than ever, to be that filter, to be that guide, and help our people, young people, understand and digest all the information that's coming at them.
No, I appreciate that. What would you say for folks who are feeling discouraged or who are nervous about talking to their families about race?
Yeah, I mean, first is acknowledging that it is a hard topic, and you know, I think parents and guardians should be transparent around their current feelings and their emotions, and you know, be as authentic as you can with your children. This is the time where they need to know how you really feel, and you know how it's impacted your life, and some of the experiences you had. So I think it's more so important that we be really raw with our children in terms of the way that we're feeling, and then acknowledge that it's okay to not be okay, and that, you know, it is okay to be fragile at this moment. It's okay to have fears in this moment, but know that we are standing with our children and that we intend to be a guide for them. And then the final reminder that we must express to our children, regardless of their age. And I know sometimes parents, we think, well, you know, my child's too young and they don't understand is things can be different. And our tomorrow can be better than our today. And that we are leaning on our children and our youth to be a brighter future, and talk with them about what it means to create change and not being afraid of being a leader when they don't necessarily agree with the status quo. And I think those are messages that we can send to our first graders that are, you know, 6 and 7 years of age, and our seniors in high school that are maybe 17, 18 years of age. And that's a message that we need to communicate very loudly and very clearly.
Thank you so much, Chancellor Farabee. I appreciate you providing a space for myself and other DCPS employees and families, and to be able to be vulnerable in this time. And I also understand that a lot of people don't work in an environment that allows them to be authentically themselves and to address systemic racism. So thank you.
Thank you.
Whew. That was our chancellor, Chancellor Louis Farabee. And I can tell you that it is an honor and a privilege to work for him every day and work for the families in DCPS. It means the world to me as a native Washingtonian, as a DCPS, someone who's attended DCPS schools, and as a parent. So before we dive in, you all are completely just engaging this thread, and I love it. We're going to get to a lot of your questions. Our moderators are working as quickly as they can. But initially, the goal of Parent University was to provide a space for families to share what they know. You all are experts in your children. You know what's best for them. And so providing a network for families to engage with each other, to learn from other DCPS families. So just like you might have insight in one space about parenting and being a family member, to then learn from other families, and then to also hear from DCPS. So hearing from us, we want to parent. One of the things that I learned as a new parent is that you ask people for advice, you trust your gut, and then Google the rest. And so we wanted to limit how much you all have to Google to learn about being DCPS parents and families. And so for those of you who are not part of the DCPS community, first of all, welcome, because you are now. But I hope that your school districts or your schools are doing the same thing or something similar. So as part of our beliefs in how families are integral in the ways that they inform their children's education, we believe that families play 5 roles in accelerating student learning. So communicating high expectations. This looks like letting them know about making sure their homework is done, but then also allowing them to see what they want their future to be and to communicate how important getting an education is. Monitoring your child's performance. When you're checking those grades, when you are checking their backpacks to make sure that their homework is done. Supporting learning at home. You all have been doing this for longer than the last 3 months, but you all have really stepped up in this space in a way that is just so admirable, while also managing the stress that you all have as family members. And so I tip my hat off to you. I see you, and I want to acknowledge the fact that you all are doing an amazing job. Another piece is guiding your child's education. And so when you're thinking about what the next steps are for your child in terms of what's the next school, does this school feel right for my child? And there may be families here online right now who because of the response or lack thereof to the current crisis, that might be wondering whether or not the school that your child is in is the right one for your child, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And then to advocate for your child. I have seen parents go to bat for their children in a way that is so admirable, and I know that oftentimes it can feel like you are shouting into the air. Keep that energy, because you are your child's first teacher and first advocate, and they will see that and they will know that they have a right to advocate for themselves. And that is just the most amazing thing, and that's something that I look forward to as my daughter gets older. So without further ado, I want to pass the baton over to my friend, my partner in crime, Liz Rene.
Thank you, Taylor. Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Liz Rene, and I'm a manager on the Equity Strategy and Programming team here in DCPS. And what we're about to go through tonight is what I have the pleasure of doing every day in my job. And in light of everything that's been going on, I'm going to be vulnerable and say that I am tired. It's a lot. And we, including Taylor, DJ, who you're going to meet in a little bit, we're going to be modeling a lot of vulnerability for you in this space, but it's all going to be worth it because we want these conversations to be happening, not only in DC classrooms, not only in our central office teams, but all across, well, I guess in this case, the world, since we have people tuning in from everywhere. So without further ado, also want to give us a chance to see who else we're going to be including in this conversation. So as I said, my name is Liz. I also want to isolate race here. I'm a Black woman, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Taylor, would you like to reintroduce yourself?
Yes. Let me put myself on the screen really quickly. Again, my name is Taylor Stanley. I am also a Black woman. I'm the Family Engagement Specialist for DC Public Schools, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers.
Hey everyone, my name is DJ Brooks. I am both a DCPS employee. I'm the Director of Strategy and Logistics at Bancroft Elementary School. I am also a DCPS parent, proudly. My daughter attends Watkins Elementary School, and my pronouns are he, him, and his.
All right. Thank you. So it'll be the three of us today. And I want to turn it over to Taylor. She did a really good job of just sharing a little bit about the why we're here today. But I want to make it very plain and simple. So Taylor, I'll let you take it from here to just push home why we are here today.
Absolutely. Again, so right now I am wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt that I bought 2017, and the font, the Black Lives Matter is written in the names of Black people who have been slain, and it's out of date. Just in this year alone, we've seen the faces of Tony McDade, of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, who have been slain. And these are just the ones that we know about. There are, it seems like even this week we're hearing more and more stories that have been buried. And it doesn't matter where these people are. What particularly resonates with me, Breonna Taylor, and we've all been in our homes for the past 3 months. And home, if anywhere, if anything happens, you're supposed to be safe at home. And knowing that that's not the case, honestly keeps me up at night. And so, you know, in the midst of all this information, folks are asking, what can I do? How do I talk to my child about this? And folks are asking the right questions. It's a matter of who we ask them of. A lot of Black people are doing the emotional labor for themselves. They are trying to process everything that's happening, and may not have the capacity or the words to walk someone else through it, let alone themselves. And so we are doing this for other people's benefit as much as it is for the benefit of other Black people who are not able to answer the questions that other people may not have, that other people may have. And so we are walking through pieces. We'll talk more about strategies, but these faces are the why. They're not even every single face from this year. They're not even the faces of the last five months. And it's unfortunate to know that there will be more of these. I can guarantee it. So that is the why. That's why we're here. And we're just gonna keep flowing.
Thank you, Taylor. Another one of the reasons why we're here today is because in DCPS we have our values, and equity is one of those values. But in addition to equity being a value in DCPS, along with students first, teamwork, courage, joy, excellence, equity is also a strategic initiative here. It's not just something that we want to have on the board. We're trying to make sure it's not a buzzword. It's something that we and myself personally are doing every day. So in addition to sharing these values, I just wanted to take the time to share with you all what our actual definition is of equity here in DCPS. And it's exactly this, what Taylor just shared on the screen. So equity at DCPS means that we're creating an environment in which we're eliminating opportunity gaps, not just closing it, eliminating it, not just narrowing it, eliminating it, interrupting institutional bias, and removing barriers to academic and social success, specifically for students of color. To promote equity, DCPS will provide access, inclusion, and affirmation, offering the most support where the greatest disparities have persisted. This was a definition that we crafted about 1.5 years ago alongside all DCPS principals, collaborated with central office teams to really just to really get at the fact that how can you address inequities if you don't even know what equity is in your district? What does this mean? And how are we going to approach the work? So I'm going to introduce some norms in a little bit that also kind of gets behind how we got here in this definition. You'll notice I keep saying isolating race. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means for the sake of this conversation, but also the work that we do in the district. All righty. So our norms for this conversation come from courageous conversations about race. If you're a DCPS teacher, DCPS central office staff person who has done courageous conversations about race before, please feel free to let us know in the chat. If you are a DCPS teacher who has not yet had the opportunity to do courageous conversations about race, let us know. I'll share my email at the end. We're going to continue to have offerings and virtual offerings. But basically, courageous conversations about race, one of the things that they've introduced to us as a staff at DCPS are these norms to have these what we call courageous conversations, to have these difficult conversations. And as it comes back up on the screen, what we'll share with you is perfect. So on the left side of the screen, what we have is a compass, and it's our courageous conversation compass. It's an opportunity to check in and really determine where am I entering this conversation. So as I talk through the compass, I would love for you all to just chime in on the chat to let me know where are you entering this conversation. So are you in thinking? Do you have a lot of questions? Do you have a lot of wonderings? Are you wondering where is the research to back up what we're talking about? If you're in the thinking quadrant, I just want to ask you to write in the chat. I'm in thinking. If you are in acting, you are in a space where you feel like I have all the information I need. I just want to know. Feel free to write in the chat. I'm in acting. If you are in feeling where you have a lot of feelings right now that are coming up to you, write that down. I'm in feeling. And then last but not least, if you're in believing, if you have a lot of beliefs about what's happening right now, based on your morals and values, write in the chat, I'm in belief. And I do apologize for those who may be hearing an echo right now. We're trying to work on that on our end. All right, and so just to walk you all through the additional parts of this, this courageous conversation. We have our agreements, which are staying engaged, experiencing discomfort, speaking your truth, and accepting non-closure. And then for our condition, we're just going to focus on the first two here, which is focusing on your personal, local, and immediate. Your experiences, how are you showing up in this? And isolating race. So as I said, I'm a Black person coming into this work. So we're gonna jump to what we like to call an SEL connection. And that is an opportunity to share the relationship between our work on the SEL team and the equity team here in DCPS. So in the chat, what I'd love for you all to see the prompt and share your favorite Disney movie or character.
And so now in the chat, when we think about the images that we might have seen, particularly as children, particularly for cartoons, we realize that there might be some oversimplified images or ideas of particular people or things. And so and it's something that even companies like Disney are acknowledging. You might have seen how in their new Disney Plus, they've actually called out the fact that some of their images or language used in their cartoons, even some of our favorites, are out of date and antiquated and just not politically correct. I am going to throw Liz back on here. Thanks, Liz.
Thanks, Taylor. I'm still hearing an echo on my end.
I think that you're good on my end. But in the meantime, we encourage families to in the chat right now write some of the stereotypes or inaccuracies that you learned are associated with your favorite. It doesn't have to be a Disney movie or character as an adult. I will say that I love the representation. As a Black girl, I loved watching the Frog Princess, or the Princess and the Frog, and I was so excited that we finally had a Black Disney princess. But the theme was like, work hard, work hard, work hard, and it's just like, why couldn't she have a fairy tale that that wasn't just about like the hardworking, tired Black woman. Why was that the message that you know, she had to keep her nose to the ground and keep working, like, and so those were some of my experiences that I encountered, and so it's becoming more relevant now because I am trying to figure out what I can show my daughter. You know, as a millennial parent, I'm excited to be able to share all my classic cartoons, all my favorite movies with my daughter. And now that, you know, there's more awareness, that there's a deeper understanding of what these images mean and can do to somebody, I have to be more cognizant. I have to be more mindful in how I engage with folks. So at the age of 3, these children had a set of stereotypes in place. Though I would not describe 3-year-olds as prejudiced, the stereotypes to which they have been exposed become the foundation for the adult prejudice so many of us have. And that's from Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, author of Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? She's also the former president of Spelman College. And so for a lot of educators, this is one of the first books that they pick up to be able to address issues of equity within the classroom and school, particularly for Black students. If you all want to do a deeper dive, there's an article, and we'll be sharing the resource in a folder for you all at the end of the workshop. Reading the article, it's time to talk about Dr. Seuss. This was a particularly tough conversation for me because the Lorax has shaped who I am as someone who wants to speak up for others, for someone who wants to advocate for others. And so there's this cognitive dissonance that I have, that, you know, this person who wrote this book, who has framed me and shaped me so much, is also very problematic. So I'm going to bring Liz back to talk through this piece. And this is something that was really informative to me, and that I couldn't even fathom when I first saw it.
Thank you, Taylor. Okay, I think my echo has gone away. Thank you, Taylor, for taking that on. Just to add on for the Disney example, one of the examples that I've learned about as a Black woman in my adult age is Dumbo. The crows that were, you know, everybody remembers the crows on the power line in Dumbo, but one of the crows was named Jim Crow. As a kid, you're not thinking about any of these things, but as an adult, when you have more awareness, it's like, wow, what was I taking in as a young child watching Dumbo that I may not have recognized, and how is that potentially connecting to what I'm experiencing and thinking about myself even today? But what I wanted to also share some context around is just, I feel like as parents, you know, there's definitely a concern around when is the right time to talk to my child about race. And what we wanted to share, and we've shared in DCPS with a lot of our teachers as well, is your child is noticing race. I cannot tell you when the appropriate time is to have that conversation, but what I can tell you is, based on the research, children are noticing differences in skin color, race, physical features from a very young age. And although the chart here breaks it down, what I want us to hone in on is the very last box under 6+. So explicit conversations with 5 to 7-year-olds about interracial friendships can significantly impact your child in a positive way within a matter of a week. So once again, this is not me saying that between the ages of 5 and 7, that's the time to have the conversation, but just knowing based on the research that it can have a positive influence on your child's relationship with people that look different than them, and as soon as a week or as short as a week. Just thinking about, okay, well, maybe there's an approach that I can take to this. One other thing that I wanted to mention, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, is with everything that's happening in the world right now, it's very important to, as a parent, as an educator, to have the opportunity to control the narrative around talking about race with your child. So, you know, with everything happening in the world, do you want your child's first experience with race to be a negative one, or do you want to share more positive experiences with your child about race so they can be proud about who they are and not ashamed of it? So one thing to answer in the chat, you see this already came up. On a scale of 1 to 5, how often do you talk to your kids about race? 1 being not at all and 5 being all the time. If you want to, you can also share how old your children are. Like I said, this is not a place to shame. When you decide to have that conversation is ultimately up to you, as well as how often you have that conversation. You can also use the anonymous feature as well, just to really ensure confidentiality. All right, so we'll go back to the next slide. I'm so excited I don't have an echo. DJ, I have a question for you now, and that is, how are you, or will you be talking about race with your children? And if you could just remind folks of how old your children are.
Yeah, sure. Yay for no echoes. In terms of how old my children are right now, so I have an 8-year-old daughter who goes to Watkins Elementary School. Shout out Watkins, and Principal Elena Beard, who's also a Spelman alum. So shout out Spelman, shout out Morehouse. Yeah, so my daughter's 8. She's a rising 4th grader, and my son is almost 2. He's 20 months. I didn't want to be one of those pretentious parents who says, "Oh, my kid's 54 months old," right? But yeah, he's not quite 2. In full sort of vulnerability and transparency, the first time I had a conversation with my daughter about this subject was, man, she's almost 8 now. So probably about 5 years ago, when she was around 3, we were living in Detroit at the time, in a suburb of Detroit, and so she was attending like a early learning center, and came home one day and told us that one of the little white boys at our school said he didn't want to play with her because she had brown skin, and like, period. That there was no like undertow, there was no like, you know, well, maybe it was, but I don't know, it actually was like a thing. And so at 3, we had to have this conversation with her about what it meant to have brown skin and how, you know, positive it was, and like all of the affirmations that, like, you know, Liz was talking about. We had to have this conversation with her at 3, and I remembered like the night after, like, we talked to her, we put her to bed, like just looking at my wife and just saying, like, I can't believe, like, at 3, right? Like, this child doesn't have malice in their heart, the one that said this, and this is learned. And so, of course, you know, being, because I had worked at DCPS before, you know, I'd been a part of race and equity, and had totally like, oh, well, I'm going to go talk to the teacher and then the director, and then I'm going to talk to the parent, and I'm going to help them understand. And I'm not going to call them out, but I'm going to call them in, right? And so I think that process like threw me. And it's so funny, we were talking about Disney, because I then went into my daughter's room and was like, Ariel has to go, and you know, Elsa has to go, and we're getting Jasmine, and we're getting Mulan, and we're getting what's the chocolate one's name? Yeah, Tiana. Yeah, her too, right? And we did this whole sort of like rehashing of what her childhood experience would be when in terms of representation. And while it was like kind of, it was traumatic for both of us, I think, at the time, it gave us a jumping on point to have that conversation. And it's a conversation that until the last 2 weeks we had been continuing to have. And in full disclosure, I have not talked to her about Ahmad or Brianna or anyone in the past 2 months because I am scared poopless.
Thank you, DJ, for sharing your truth, speaking your truth, going back to our norms, but also modeling vulnerability. I know for me as a Black woman, being able to admit that I may not have talked to my kids about race yet, I feel like sometimes there's an expectation on me as a Black person to have that conversation early on, but I think this is a great example of, for all of us, it's really difficult to determine when is the right time. And once again, that answer is ultimately going to be up to you based on how well you know your children and based on all of the research and the information that you have access to. So when we went over this yesterday, I really appreciated DJ for that vulnerability, and I appreciate you once again. So thank you for that. But now what I want us to just transition to is a video, believe it or not, using jelly beans. Yes, jelly beans, to talk about race. It's funny because I'm saying that this is a strategy to talk about race with your kids. Wholeheartedly, if you're in the chat and you've seen this video before from DCPS, I use it to talk about race with adults as well, because oftentimes when we have conversations about race, we carry so many identities, ethnicity, nationality, and it can all get jumbled up because it's important to who we are. But when we're having conversations about race, especially when we're acknowledging the fact that Black and brown people specifically are being impacted by what's happening by coronavirus, by police brutality, in different ways, it's important to be able to identify that part specifically, so we don't detour away from what's really important. So this is a video we're going to show a clip of. Once again, it's going to be explaining the difference between race, ethnicity, and nationality.
Race, ethnicity, and nationality are three terms that get thrown around a lot, and all too often they're used interchangeably, ignored, or just used incorrectly. But each of these words actually has a very distinct meaning, and I'm going to talk about them today using my favorite candy, jelly beans. Let's start with race. Now, you may have heard someone say, race is a human construct, and that's true. Race is a mode of categorization that's based on physical appearance. So in the case of jelly beans, race is color. Because race is based on appearance, to some degree it's ascribed, meaning that people are assigned into racial categories based on what other people see. Even if somebody could be mistaken for a certain racial category, it can still apply to them. These categories are fluid, and our ideas of racial groupings change all the time. It's also important to remember that a person can have parents with two different racial backgrounds. The population of the world is becoming increasingly mixed, but even a person with multiple races will still ultimately belong to a racial category themselves, whether or not it's the same as their parents. Race is a huge factor in daily life, but it isn't the whole picture. The term race does not capture the complexities of ethnicity. Ethnicity refers to the ethnic group or groups that a person belongs to. It's a part of a person's heritage and ancestry. In the case of jelly beans, ethnicity is like the flavor. Two people who are in the same racial group can still have very different ethnicities. For example, all of these are red, but this one is cinnamon and this one is cherry. Two people in the same racial group can and often do have very different backgrounds. It's important to note that there are some groups who are unable to trace their specific ethnic heritage because of things like slavery, assimilation, and genocide. Ethnicity is a huge part of identity formation and development, but it's still not the same as nationality. The word nationality refers to someone's national origin, the country where they hold citizenship. For jelly beans, it's like the bag that a bean comes from. People of the same race or ethnicity can come from all different nations, like the watermelon bean that's in Camo Mix and Kids Mix, or the lemon lime bean that's in all three. And nationality is flexible. If a person immigrates, their nationality can change. People can have dual citizenship or sometimes no citizenship at all. So now you know. As a quick recap, race is a mode of categorization based on physical appearance, like the color of a jelly bean. Ethnicity is a person's actual ethnic background based on their ancestry, like the flavor of a jelly bean. And nationality is the place where a person holds citizenship, which is like the jelly bean's bag. Now that you know the difference, you can have a much more comprehensive conversation about identity issues. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video because I totally enjoyed eating these jelly beans afterwards.
Thank you for watching. In all transparency, I do not like jelly beans, but I wouldn't be opposed to buying some to have this conversation and kind of break it down for folks. So just once again, to break it down as the moderator described in the video, Race is the color of a jelly bean because for us, race is the color of our skin. Ethnicity is the flavor of a jelly bean, kind of about your ancestry. My ancestors come from Africa. And nationality is kind of the bag of where the jelly bean comes from, or the brand. So my nationality is I am a US citizen whose parents are from the Caribbean. So that's just an example to model, and hoping that you all will be able to lean into the same. One question for you all to answer in the chat is, what other strategies have you used to explain race to your children or to your peers? Do you use other analogies? Do you just keep it plain and simple? How do you describe race to your kids? Would love to hear what you all have used in the past. All right. So for this next strategy, I like to call it strategy 1.5 because I feel like when we have conversations about what you can do differently to talk to your kids about race or just to be more inclusive in the classroom, this always comes up. So I didn't want to have it be one sole strategy. I'm calling it strategy 1.5. It's being mindful of the representation that you have for your kids, not only when it comes to books, when it comes to movies, when it comes to the classes they're attending. Are their dance instructors Black? Are they white? Are they Latinx? Are they representative of this city that we live in? For those of you who are in the area, DC is a very diverse city, used to be known as a chocolate city. So how are you taking that step to make sure that your child's experiences, from books to movies to real life experiences, are representative of the world and not the bubble that we all can honestly live in sometimes? So this graphic is from Teaching for Change specifically, and it's actually showing, if you see it on the screen, 50% of children's books are representative of white children. 27% are of animals. And if you combine the representation of Native Americans, Latinx students, Asian American Pacific Islander students, and Black students, combine that, it's still less than the representation of animals in children's books. So that is just kind of to put it into perspective for you all, and to also acknowledge that it's going to be a little harder to find that representation. So what I want to show here are just a few examples, especially given that many of us are in DC, for where to find that representation. So first and foremost, Busboys and Poets. Politics and Prose is attached to that. A lot of my baby shower books I get from that. Mahogany Books and Sankofa Books, specifically Black owned. Totally Moly has a lot of books with Asian American representation. Teaching for Change has a guide to help you out with making sure you're selecting books that are anti-bias. National Museum of African American History and Culture, they actually just opened up a whole new website about talking to your kids about race. So please feel free to check there for some more new timely resources. And this last one was very interesting to me. Taylor informed me, I had no idea. Dolly Parton, y'all, she has some very diverse books and they're free. So feel free to check out that as a resource as well. Also want to mention some families are asking in the chat for the jelly bean video. If you use the link bit.ly/parentuRace, bit.ly/parentuRace, you can get the video. And also buy some jelly beans. See if you can, play around with them with your kids. All right, so on to the next slide. And yes, in the chat, please share other examples of books that are very representative that you really enjoy with your child. I've seen a lot of resources online lately. But we're going to hop into strategy number 2, and that is sharing your racial autobiography. This is another, resource that we've learned with our work with Courageous Conversations About Race. Once again, they've led many trainings for DCPS staff, teachers in central office, to build a deeper understanding of our experiences with race and how that shows up in our work and with our students. So one of the first questions that one would typically answer when it comes to your racial autobiography is, what was your first personal experience in dealing with race or racism? So your racial autobiography is the combination of your first experience with race and your most recent experience with race. For many of us, I imagine your most recent experiences are having to deal with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, Breonna Taylor, and everything else that we're experiencing right now. So I would love for you to answer in the chat, what was your first personal experience in dealing with race or racism? And I also want to make a reminder, race is both positive and negative. I think sometimes when this question is posed, people get nervous because they're like, I'm not trying to share that level of, vulnerability with people. But for many people, especially my experience as a Black person, I've had some positive experience with race because my parents, and you'll meet them in a little bit, are very proud Black people. So my first experiences didn't have to be negative because my parents and my family made sure that I knew that Black was beautiful, and therefore my first experience with race was indeed positive. So please keep that in mind, and I'm gonna model for you what sharing your racial autobiography with your child can look like. All right, so what it can look like is basically pictures, sharing pictures. You could share videos, etc. But it's an opportunity for you to kind of share with your children, here are my experiences with race, and here's a visual to back it up. So I'm gonna model kind of what my racial autobiography is. Many of my DCPS colleagues have seen variations of these photos, but I added some new ones as well. So on the left here, who we have is my grandpa, Carlos. Rest in peace, he passed away a little while ago. But for the longest, I thought my grandpa was Jamaican because, like I said, my family's from the Caribbean. He had this accent, but he was actually, turns out, a Black Cuban man. From where I stood as a kid, I didn't know that, people who spoke Spanish could also look like me. So that's something that I had to navigate. And so if we go on to the next photo, I told you I would introduce you to my parents. Here's my mom, Jamaican woman. That cute little baby is me. And if you go on to the next picture, my dad, a very vibrant Haitian man. For those of you who are Haitian or live in Miami, Connecticut, New York, you know what I mean when I say a vibrant Haitian man, which is all positive. Another thing to acknowledge about Haitian culture is even down to our history and the flag. It's representative of freedom and independence. If you look into the history of the Haitian Revolution, it's all about, once again, freedom and independence. So I share all that to say that, once again, my family were very proud in our Blackness, even though they came from somewhere else. So if we go on to this next photo, for me as a Black little girl growing up, weekends were always important for getting your hair done. That's my sister who raised me from middle school on until college, Tanika. She might be here with my nephew Preston. Also, Taylor, did you want me to acknowledge the timing right now? Did you want to make a comment about that?
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge that we are at an hour, and I know that a lot of people, it's dinner time. And so if we will have this recording posted on our YouTube page. The resources are also available at, and I'll put it in the announcement, bit.ly/ParentURace. And so you'll be able to find resources, including the presentation at this link. But check back for those of you who have to go and put dinner on the table. I completely understand. Check back in a few days to see the rest of the presentation if you have to go, and I completely understand.
Thank you, Taylor. And thank you all. For those who have to hop off, you can check out the recording as Taylor mentioned. And for those of you who can stay, whenever you do have to hop off, that's completely fine. And then Taylor, you can actually go ahead and share the rest of these photos so I can kind of just share very quickly. So once again, isolating race and my experiences with race. As Taylor mentioned, what we have in common is we're both from Georgia. And if you want to guess in the comments what college we went to, you can see from one of the pictures. In
Go
Georgia,
Dogs.
Go Dogs. I went to high school in Clayton County, Georgia, which is a predominantly Black county in Georgia. And then I went to the University of Georgia, which is a predominantly white institution. So both of those experiences impacted me in different ways and kind of is combined into the person you're seeing before you today. But last but certainly not least, I just wanted to show pictures of my beautiful Black family. Like I said, combinations of Jamaican, Haitian, etc. And if this works this time, I wanted to show a little clip of Black Boy Joy of my nephew, who is now 13, but was 12 in this video. It's the last time I saw him before everything that's happened with coronavirus, but just Black Boy Joy opening Christmas presents. And for those of you in the chat, I want you to look at the video in the back. Tell me what movie you think is on.
Thank you. You're welcome. Liz.
Taylor, do you want to tell them what movie's in the background?
That's Tyler Perry's Diary of a Mad Black Woman. So that's a culture classic.
It is a culture classic indeed. But that's kind of the culmination of my experience with Blackness. I go home to Georgia for Christmas. My Black nephew is excited to open Christmas presents. We have Tyler Perry, judge me in the comments if you need to, on in the background. My grandma's yelling in patois in the background as well, and everybody's opening their Christmas presents up. And it's just so much joy. But I also end with a picture of my nephew because recently, these past few weeks, we've been having conversations about the protests, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McDade. He's very aware of what's going on. And I asked him a simple question. I was like, Preston, how are you feeling about what's going on right now? Like, what's coming up for you? And he said, I'm mad. He said, I'm angry. And he said, it's not fair. So I know, of course, 13, you're a little older. It kind of maybe makes sense to have these conversations. But once again, just acknowledging that our kids feel this too. And I see my nephew as my kid. He's feeling this too. It's impacting him. And for me personally, as his auntie, all the way in DC, he's seeing protests happening, etc. I feel like it would be remiss for me not to, one, let him know that I'm okay. And two, if he wants someone to talk to about it, especially about his experience as a Black boy in all of this, that I'm here. So that's an example of what your racial autobiography can look like, isolating race in your journey along the years. And Taylor and DJ are going to have an opportunity to share from their perspective, just so you have a few additional examples. But we're going to go on to the next strategy, and we're almost close to the end. And I have a colleague who's judging me for Tyler Perry in the comments, but I digress. So strategy number 3, when you're having conversations with your child about race, kids, let's be real, they say the wildest things, but because of that, they're hilarious. But sometimes they're also alarming, but their intent we know is pure. They're curious, they see things, and sometimes they don't have a filter. So how do you address those comments when they come up in real time in front of people at the dinner table? How do you address those? So this is a strategy that we call embrace, correct, and monitor. You embrace what they're saying, you correct any misinformation, inaccuracies, or stereotypes, and you monitor how they're taking the conversation. What emotions are coming up for them, and are they continuing to bring this up again? So here are some examples. Like I said, kids say some wild things from Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum, once again from Spelman College. Why are all the Black kids sitting together in the cafeteria? Here are some examples of real things kids have said. And I literally put the page numbers in here for you all. If you have that book, you can go in and you can see that she shares these examples. Eddie says, my skin is brown because I drink too much chocolate milk. Mommy, look at this girl. Why is she so dirty? Am I Black? If Africa's so good, what are we doing here? Are all white people bad? And I know for some of us, we might feel like, wow, like that's a lot. But these are examples of what kids say, and I know that many of us in our experiences have heard something similar or just something along these same lines. So I'm going to share some examples of what it means to truly embrace, correct, and monitor. So one, don't be afraid to observe what they're saying, to embrace race. I know a lot of times someone mentions like, oh my gosh, like look at that Black person. And you see the mom, shh, don't say anything. Don't be afraid to let them observe race. Saying something's white is not a bad thing. Saying something's Black is not a bad thing. It's actually a beautiful thing that you're acknowledging it. To say that you don't see it is when we have to have another conversation. So embracing the question and just educating them from there. Another thing that you can do, but please be mindful, this should not be your default. You can revisit the question at a later time. If you're just like, what did my kid just say? I am so lost right now. You can be like, you know what? That was a good question. I'll come back at you a later time and we'll talk about it. Hold me accountable. So when it comes to the next phase here, keep in mind every child's developmental stage. So we're having conversations about inequities and stereotypes and implicit bias. Probably not the language you want to use with your child, but you can just continue to tell them the truth and keep it real based on the terminology that they're already currently using. Another example is storytelling. Paint a picture for them. Help them really understand what it is that you're trying to convey. And last but certainly not least, offer affirmation and encourage curiosity. One of the worst things, in my opinion, that we can do is to kind of shut down a child's curiosity, to shut down their question, because then they're learning, okay, I don't get why this is bad, but this is a bad thing. And once again, these experiences roll into who we show up as an adult. So offer affirmation and encourage them to actually ask more questions and prepare yourself to answer those questions as they come up. All right, so this clip here, I want you all to look as these parents are engaging with two of their kids in a conversation. Notice where they're embracing, correcting, or monitoring. I want you all to look for that in this video.
Not to you. You are caring.
Caring.
You always stick up for the kid that needs to be stuck up for. You are courageous. You are brave.
Unless there are bugs around.
There's so many things that are true about you, right? That we know this. You know those things about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what Papa is trying to say is that people are going to see you, and without knowing anything about you, all they can see is that you are a good-looking Black boy, right? But they're going to see the Black skin, and for some people,
bad kids real?
Bad kids are real. Bad kids do exist.
Bad kids, bad people, all
Yeah.
of them.
But
Let me finish.
But you're not a bad kid or a bad person, is what we're trying to say. But some people will see this color of skin and they will start to assume things about you. Do you know what that means? To assume?
They're gonna guess.
They're gonna guess about your character.
Yeah, but what if I guess back and they're doing bad stuff, and can I run them back to you guys and tell?
Of course, always.
You can always tell us.
Yeah. But what your Papa is trying to say is that some people are going to see the color of your skin and they're going to think that you're a bad person just because you're Black.
That.
Do you understand that?
Why are they gonna think I'm a bad person?
That's because they're stupid.
My friends don't.
Your
No, our
friends
friends
do
don't.
not, because they know you.
Yeah.
They know all those things that we said about you to be true. They know that you're smart, that you're kind, that you love people, that you're courageous, that you're brave. They know all those things about you.
But that's why we tell you not to talk to strangers, because everybody doesn't know you.
But a lot of people know you.
Right. They
Does
think.
that mean you're famous?
Well, it's not about being famous. And so basically, we make the video. The reason why people know who I am is because we make videos about
what it is to be Black. We make videos about Black family. We're a Black family.
And about dad.
And about dads, true. But people know me because we make the videos. If they didn't know me, they wouldn't care.
So I just get so many. I'm in the feelings quadrant of the compass we went through earlier, even though I was echoing earlier. I think this is a great example of a conversation that two parents are having in a very transparent way, where they're embracing their child's curiosity, affirming the child to let them know that you are Black and that is beautiful, and just encouraging their questions and just affirming that curiosity that they have. As a reminder, we have a link to all of the videos that we're sharing here. It's actually a very long video. I encourage you to watch it in its entirety, and I'm going to share the link. We're going to share the link up on the screen in just a second. And then also, in addition to this video, the bubble should be popping up in just a second. Also want to encourage you to look up The Talk by My Black is Beautiful on YouTube. It's another great video just showing different interactions. However, one thing, and I'm going to give this to myself as some homework that I also want people to do, is I encourage you to look up videos of different people across racial identities having conversations about race with their children. I feel like for me, because of the bubble I live in, I'm seeing a lot of videos of Black families having conversations with their Black sons. But for me, I want to see what it looks like when white families have conversations about race with their children. And I'm sure they exist, but it's just up to me to do that research. So I welcome you to just remember, these are not just conversations that people of color should be having with their children. It's conversations that we all should be having with our children whenever that time seems most appropriate. So want to just pose a question to DJ and then to Taylor. How are you? I guess DJ kind of talked a little bit about this earlier. How are you talking about what's going on today? Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Tony McDade, and many more with your children. And Taylor, I know your little one is 1.5 years old, but if she were a little older, how might you approach it? But I'll let DJ take this one first.
Yeah, sure. So earlier, I talked about just like our first experience of talking about race, and how it, given everything that's happened over the past 2 weeks, I had to have an honest, I would say, maybe introductory conversation just with my wife about how we wanted to approach it. Anyone who is in any type of relationship, be it marital or otherwise, same sex or otherwise, right? Like, one of the things, especially when it comes to kids, one of the things you have to do is be on the same page for tons of different reasons, right? And so while we haven't had the conversation with Adri that we will eventually have, one of the things that I've been able to take away from just my wife and I's initial conversation is just that it's okay to struggle with having the conversation. A thing that I've heard from my white friends and non-Black POC friends is that they know they want to have the conversation, but they don't know where the sort of entry level is. And it's okay, right? Like, Black people struggle with that too. It's not like we all have like the same playbook that we're all operating off of. And we're like, okay, so, 2nd and 3, we go and talk to her about this, right? Like, that's not it. Like, we all struggle. We're all people. And that's a great sort of common thread that we can kind of connect on as parents. But it has also taught me that as much training and experience and as many sessions as I facilitated, like, I'm not there, and it's not about being there in terms of a destination, in terms of like, oh yeah, you know what, you get racism, you beat it. you're on the top level. It's a journey, and so like it's humbled me in a way to know that I need to continue to grow in my ability to communicate with my daughter about this. And so We have another conversation set up. Yes, we do schedule conversations, especially important ones. Another parent cheat code. And so we have another conversation scheduled for tomorrow. And then on Saturday, we're going to have a family day. And a part of the family day before we start to watch movies is going to be talking about this.
Thanks, DJ. Yeah, I do have a 1.5-year-old. Right now, I am in the self-love phase where I'm surrounding her with images of people who look like her, so that when I'm able to have this conversation with her, and to be perfectly clear, my husband and I have not figured out when we're going to have this conversation with her, that we can start in the same way that we saw in the video, that we don't have to get to the you're beautiful phase. We've done that work, surrounding her with positive images from the books that she reads, to trying to find shows. It is extremely hard right now finding shows that are centered around Black little girls. It is hard. I have found 2 on, and so one of them is Doc McStuffins, and then another one is Esme and Roy. And then we have our YouTube shows. It's hard to find content, again, that are centered around Black children, which is hard, but it's frustrating, but also relieving that it's come such a long way. My mom used to find books for me that were about Black people. And then I remember there were toys and books that weren't about Black people, but didn't center around race, that featured white characters. My mom would take a magic marker and color in their faces. Like that was so important to her. I had block toys that were originally white characters, and my mom would color in their faces because it was so hard for a parent in the late 80s, early 90s, trying to find images and toys of Black people. And so that's where I'm leaning in, so that when I do have to have this conversation with her, my daughter, about race and the fact that people will just not like her because of the color of her skin, she knows that that's not a her thing. That's not because of anything she did, and that it's a sickness that they have. Because as far as I'm concerned, my child is the best thing in the world. She's the light of my universe. And my job as a Black mother is to make sure that I can keep my child's light on as long as possible, because I've seen too often that the light of being a kid in America is shut off so quickly for Black children. They're not allowed to be kids for long. And so it's like, it's like, you know, and so I want to maintain that magic, that invincibility, that lack of burden for so long. And so, you know, for my white families who are like, well, I don't want to have the talk. Child, nobody wants to have this talk. I was, in the weeks after my daughter was born, there would be nights where I would be sobbing because I knew that my child would have to know what it's like to be a Black woman in America. Nobody wants to have this talk. Nobody wants this to be a reality. And at this point, the truth of the matter is that if I don't have the talk with my child, that can mean life or death. And what we're seeing now, what I'm seeing on my corner of social media, is the fact that when white parents don't have the talk with their white children are going onto social media. They are saying things, they're posting pictures, they're posting challenges. The most recent one I've seen is the George Floyd challenge, where you're seeing white children put their knees on their friends' necks as a joke. And you know what's happening? There are people who do not care that these are teenagers, that these are children, and they are what's called doxing them and sending the images, writing in to the universities that they're applying to, writing into their high schools, their middle schools, and they're effectively ending the lives of white children who are continuing to post hateful messages. And the truth of the matter is that the experience that they will feel about having opportunities stripped away from them, it does not compare to lives lost because of racism. And so I'm sick of having this conversation. And so when I see people in the chat asking about what can I do, what can we do in the wake of COVID,